Hello, friends. Susan Axelrod here, the Confidence Coach. Isn't life extraordinary? Sometimes I just look at my life and I laugh a little bit, but mostly I'm in a little bit of awe of the things that have occurred in my life, but most especially the people who have been drawn to me and to whom I have been drawn. I have a friend in England, the inimitable Nadine Searle, who is the Calmer Self Coach. We have become so close and so close-knit that our personal conversations are deep and abiding. When we have these conversations, inevitably one of us says to the other, this is a conversation that we should share. And so in our voice texting and conversations with each other recently, this topic came up. I heard myself saying, I died a little bit that day. And Nadine said to me, I understand what you mean. And so today we're going to have this conversation shared with you. Hello, Nadine.
Hello, hello. I just got chills again when I heard you say that, remembering that voice message that I got from you when you really, just all the emotions were out there and you were saying how you felt about you died. And I go, yeah, I can so relate. And this is why this conversation needs to be shared, isn't it? Because so many people must feel the same. And again, just to share that we feel it and how we manage that and how we can make that part of our process and make it good, if you like. It sounds scary, doesn't it, when we go, part of me has died, but it isn't really, is it?
And that's what we're here to share with our listeners and our viewers today. It does sound scary, but when you're in the high consciousness of living in awareness of your life and the control that you do have over your life, you find it's not scary. To share with others, in the last few years, Nadine and I have each had separate, very distinct, pretty extremely traumatic events. Mine is more personal, and yet I'm clearly able and willing to speak about trauma and activating healing through trauma. Nadine's is out loud now because she has decided to become a voice for all of us to understand what happens when you get diagnosed with breast cancer.
Yeah.
So Nadine, when I said that line to you, I was crying, hard, and I know where I was. I was walking in beautiful Mother Nature in a preserve that I had walked in, hundreds of times over 30 years. And of course, you and I both resonate with being in nature and how you can get quiet and, your nervous system settles down into the parasympathetic, which is where we want to be when we can. And I heard that line coming out of me, and I was actually even struck myself by it. I heard myself say, I died a little bit that day. You, of course, picked up on it immediately and talked about it. And I just want to say that when there is death, there can also be rebirth and renewal. So I want to ask you, how did this comment resonate with you, with your personal experience?
It really does. I say it hit me instantly, and we do communicate in this way, don't we? We don't have that instant rapport. We can send each other voice messages, which is so precious, isn't it? And I listened to it like you shared with everyone. You were really emotional. There were tears. There was that emotion in your voice, and it hit me instantly. And I was exactly the same, going, "Oh my goodness," and feeling so honoured that you shared it with me in the moment. There's power in that. There is great strength from you that you thought of it and did it. But there's so much power, isn't there, in actually getting that out there. And that, you know, we are, goodness knows how many miles apart from each other, but the connection is there. When you did that, we connected, and that is so beautiful. So I'm really, really grateful for that. And again, to say to other people, you know, when you're in that moment, and I don't know if despair is a word you would choose, but that's what I'm going to choose to use, that moment of despair, to actually reach out to someone else. It's so valuable, isn't it? And again, just to share with everyone, you know, if you can do that, if you even think of it, it helps, doesn't it? You know, you did that, and I didn't get back to you instantly, but you knew that I was there for you. You were speaking to me directly, weren't you? You know, the universe carries that and everything. You know, you were in nature. Nature is soothing and healing, as we know, we talk about quite a lot. So you were doing a lot for yourself, which is massive, isn't it? So important that you actually go, yes, I'm feeling awful. I feel, you know, all of the things you've just expressed, you know, but I'm not alone. I can connect. I can help myself, you know, with all the things that you do in nature, saying it out loud, recognizing, releasing to a certain point. You know, you were doing all of that in the moment. And to say it's okay to feel those feelings. It's okay to be in despair and speak to someone else and reach out. Not that you need to compose yourself and they go, oh, I'll speak to Nadine later. I'll do it now. You know, wow, you know, really, really big stuff, isn't it? Not to wait, not to think there's a right time. That was the right time and you did it. And I wouldn't have done that years ago. I recognize it now. You know, I'm always talking about the old me. This is part of what we're talking about, isn't it? But it is something I would encourage anyone that's listening to this to actually really take that on board and go, you know, I can, when I'm sobbing, when I can't speak properly, when I'm feeling so bad, I can reach out. And how much benefit you get from that by doing that is important for people to know, isn't it? And it's something I've learned, and I know you know it. You know, you've sort of taught me that as well, haven't you? So it's wonderful.
Yeah. This idea of reaching out in real time through, we use a voice texting app called Boxer. And I will say that we've evolved this, and the idea that I can, you know, like you said, I'm in Arizona, you're in somewhere in England, and I don't have to worry if you're awake or asleep. I don't have to worry if you're working with a client or in a treatment or, you know, busy or whatever. But I will agree that being able to reach out to someone in real time is such a part of activating healing, Nadine. And because you're really releasing it and letting it out, and someone else is being witness to you. Now, both of us have very good friends. We could also call a little bit later and have a debriefing conversation. Well, you know, oh, I was walking in the preserve, I started sobbing, you know, that kind of thing. But it's interesting to say doing something in real time when you're not worried about imposing on the other. And I'm thinking about some people I know who have had no ability even to share what's in them. And it just got suppressed and then depressed and really took a toll, doesn't it?
Really, really does. And I think it's something you probably have it with your clients. I'm sure that you offer it to them. And I have the same with mine. I always say, reach out to me at any time. And I always say by text, because I will get back to them as soon as I'm able. So they know that. And I'm sure you say the same to your clients. And that is a great benefit for them to know that I will be listening and I will get back to them as soon as I'm able. Like you said, it's not imposing. And sometimes we don't do things because we think we're being a burden to someone else, or it's not the right time. So again, freeing yourself of that and just going, right, I can reach out. It is so important, isn't it? And actually, like you say, it's starting the activating, I think you said, the healing process. It's a start, isn't it? And as you know, I do tapping, which is EFT, emotional freedom technique, where we tap on points, acupressure points, experience, and we say things out loud. And actually, you know, it reminded me of that when I got your message. I know you weren't tapping, but you were doing lots of other things to help yourself.
Right.
But being out loud, saying it, getting it, freeing yourself in a way. And I'd like to say again on that point, it wouldn't even matter if you were very eloquent, you expressed yourself beautifully, wouldn't even matter if you weren't, you know. And again, with tapping, the first time I experienced a massive breakthrough with tapping on myself, I was sobbing uncontrollably. I had no words. There were no sounds coming out that made any sense. But I tapped on it. The sounds changed. My emotions changed. Things moved through me. That's how it works. And I thought, oh, wow, I got the real message of what this was all about. But there were no understandable words.
Yeah.
There were sounds and there were emotions. But you weren't doing that. But even if you were, even if I'd have got a message and it was you not being able to express yourself as beautifully as you did, that would have been okay too, because it would have been doing you good. I would have understood, because obviously we have that lovely connection. I think anyone would really understand, wouldn't they? And then having that chance to get back to you in my own time as well, knowing that you're here, what I've got to say back to you, it's a luxury in a way, isn't it?
I mean, I can't say how important this is, Nadine. I can't say how important this is. Depression onset is a mental illness, but before depression onset, maybe there is what I call depressive, which is not a clinical diagnosis, but yet everybody experiences it. And being in depressive often is so lonely. Of course, I am like the coach in the pocket. Every single client of mine knows that Voxer is there and they can use it. Not every client does, but let me assure you, those who do are completely moving through so much with me, and they tell me all the time. But this idea that that just came up, which we didn't plan, as none of this is planned, of how important it is, because I feel like the reason I'm really hitting on this point that you just made, I could feel the energy out there of people feeling, you know, desperately lonely and alone in those moments. And there's so much, everybody's well-being, unwellness, mental and emotional distress is their own. Something that's distressing for one is not distressing for another. People do say to me all the time, like, how have you done this? You know, and there's certain things that, you know, some of us break through and others can't or whatever. But this idea of how lonely it feels and how alone you feel with your unwellness of whatever sort it is, emotional, mental, or spiritual. And then we certainly know being in physical chronic pain, being in physical unwellness in an extended way can activate all the other things in you. Yeah. I think this is so important. But Nadine, I guess I'm feeling like, I wonder if people think they really can share this type of thing with others.
You're probably right. They probably don't. As I say, I wouldn't have done. I know that it's okay now, and I know there are people. I think I still would choose the people that I would do that with. Maybe that's not necessary, but that's how I feel at the moment. But I do feel, luckily I have lots of people around me that I can do that with. You know, you only need one, don't you? You know,
right.
And that is okay. But the message that I want to get out, you know, I've said before, and I know I've said it too, I shout at trees, I shout at the sea. Getting it out is good. So even if you haven't got a person that you can connect with, getting it out in the moment is really good. And that's probably what I want to encourage people to experiment with, because it does release and it does make you feel better in that moment, which is good. And you're absolutely right. There are so many people, you know, we still are feeling the effects of the pandemic. You know, there's still isolation, there's still loneliness, there's massive mental health issues going on that are not being addressed because everybody is stretched, aren't they? And people are alone, feeling alone. Yeah. And they don't know who to reach out to. They don't feel that they can. So hopefully this is giving them some ideas of things that they can try. and how beneficial, because we felt the benefit instantly. You know, we are continuing to feel that benefit, and it is okay. You know, there's not, I'm sure you didn't have a second's doubt of going, I can't send this message to Nadine. You didn't have that. How lovely, you know. But it is for other people to go, it is okay to do that. You know, it is okay. And even without me replying, you probably felt some kind of relief, I would imagine. So it doesn't even have to be that you're waiting for the reply, because again, that can cause anxiety, can't it? You know, but that's not what it's about. It's actually getting it out there in the first instance. The reply and anything that comes afterwards is a bonus, isn't it? But getting it out is what's important. And as I say, I do it to the sea. I live near the sea, and I shout and scream at the waves if I want to, or cry, get the emotions out. I do it to trees. Nature is there to support us. It will take all this. And it will, you know, if you want to shout at a tree, you're not doing the tree any harm. The tree is happy to take. It's receiving, giving and receiving, isn't it? You know, and it works. It makes you feel better, doesn't it? So
it's the same. You can shout at a tree. You can also hug a tree. Yes. You can, you know, I used to make fun of tree huggers in my type A day, but, you know, yeah, they're, you know, they can support us and we can support them. I want to, I think this conversation is so important. And the word that I wrote down on my page is intimacy.
Yes.
Yeah. Intimacy. So what's happening here that's coming up for me is, in order to be able to share vulnerably, you have to understand intimacy, that it's intimate to allow someone in. And that's something that is very hard for people. Even intimacy between sexual partners is very hard for people. I had this thought this morning about something I'm going to start writing about, which is looking into the eyes of the person you love. Most of us don't actually look into the eyes of the person they love because there's such a deep intimacy there. But this thing that we're talking about, when you are in personal distress like this, that we're talking about, this level of death, if you will, of a sort, then and you need to you know, release the hold of it over you to come through the canal to the other side of some sort of renewal or rebirth, which for me is literally walking a path in the preserve that day. Then intimacy is involved. And it's so important that we say this out loud. People know the word vulnerability, but this word is even under that. In order to be vulnerable, you have to be able to be intimate. And this is work that I did. I know exactly when I started the work on breaking through to intimacy in the way that we're talking about. My daughter, who is now 33 years old, Rebecca, was 2 years old. And I know that because I remember the conversation with the therapist. I remember what he said. I remember what I said. I remember the path that I started on at that time. And that's where I was. And I know Rebecca was 2 years old at that time. And so it is a journey. So what do you think about this idea of intimacy that I'm talking about?
It's so spot on, because it's exactly that, isn't it? You know, now people might think, you know, we didn't have that. We didn't look into each other's eyes when we were doing this wonderful healing together. But we have that connection. We have that intimacy. We share our vulnerability. And I've got to be honest, and I've said this before many times, I'm still not always comfortable with that. So it's something that I'm continually working on. I realize how beneficial it is, but there are times when I go, I know I've put those barriers up. I feel the need to protect myself. It's my old habits and patterns. It's one of those things which actually gets quite nicely onto what we started talking about, that death. You know, those are parts of me that, you know, I do want to release and let go of. I do want to die, if you like. And that sounds quite dramatic, but it is part of what I'm working on, you know, so that I can access my vulnerability more readily. I don't have so many barriers popping up because they are old habits and patterns that I felt the need for, years ago, I don't need now. But sometimes I have to remind myself I don't need them. So that is my ongoing process. And letting go of those and letting them die, if you like, and letting them fade away is very, very important to open up, to coming back to what you said earlier about the rebirth then that comes from that, to give me that intimacy, that, and it comes in so many different forms, doesn't it, you know, and the fact that then I can be more vulnerable. I mean, you said earlier about me sharing my experience since my cancer diagnosis. You know, I wasn't comfortable with that. I went, oh, I'm not sure, I don't know. You helped me, encouraged me, supported me to share. I'm so glad that I am doing that, because showing my vulnerability is really helping me personally to grow and learn through this. But also, I know it's helping other people, and that is really precious to me as well. Because people say all the time, and they must say it to you, you know, you're sharing how you feel. It's helped me. And they'll tell you, won't they? You probably get little messages how this helps and everything, because other people are going through what we're going through. And there is fear, and there is anxiety, there is depression, there is death, you know, that in so many shapes and forms, you know, parts of ourselves dying, people dying, old lives dying, you know, there is that. And other people are going through it. So, like you say, these conversations are to be shared, because it's to help us, you know, I'll put me first, it's helping us, isn't it? But also we know it's helping other people. So it's so, so important, isn't it? So
I mean, this is so important, for sure, without a doubt. I see you speaking and revealing vulnerably on social media, the process of being on a cancer journey with the treatment, the chemo, the surgery, and all of that. And again, I say, I am so delighted that you're doing this, because Nadine, everybody can't do this. Everybody can't. And so we are rising in our own consciousness journey to sort of step out because we can. And so it's helped me, because I've known people who have had cancer, but watching you share it in the way that you do has been edifying. It has been edifying. I feel edified. I feel like I understand it a little bit more. You've talked about your feet and your lips, and, you know, things that you wouldn't otherwise, you know if somebody didn't talk about these things. But it came up for me when you were talking. I really want to go to this place of a part of me died that day.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would imagine when someone receives a cancer diagnosis, you're sitting in a chair, probably in a doctor's office, maybe you're on a phone, maybe a Zoom call now, and you receive that. And in that moment, there's such a traumatic shock to the system that it could be said that in that moment, the greatest fear most people have of getting cancer, a part of you dies in that moment. And then somehow most people likely don't actually keel over in the chair and die, right? And so then in that next moment, a period of rebirth or renewal begins. Does that sound right to you?
So accurate. You're absolutely right. You know, my experience was, I was actually sitting in front of someone when they told me. I went into shock. I went into denial mode. So that was me shutting down. That was a mini death, if you like, because I went into that, again, that protection coming up. But when I look back, I know for a fact in that instant, the old me died. I was changed instantly. There was no going back. There was no me as I knew myself. There was no life as I knew it. Everything changed in that instant. And it really was. And as in the moment, I didn't get that, but it wasn't that long afterwards. I thought, actually, there is no going back from this. I'm not the same person. I changed instantly. So there was a death, and there was with that a feeling of loss and sadness and a grieving process to go through, which is still ongoing for lots of different reasons, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But that instant of that moment of diagnosis, which, as I say, you know, you said it, anyone that goes through that with diagnosis of anything, actually, I think, then you just go, oh, you know, when my life has changed straight away. The old me is gone, dead. That's it. There is no more. And I've said it to you quite often, haven't I? You know, in a very superficial way. I look at myself now with the way my hair is, and I look back at old pictures of me with my hair. That isn't me. That is not me. That person died. That person, and using the hair as an example because it's so simple to see that, isn't it? That person is not me anymore. And that happened, you know, with the diagnosis. It happened when my hair went. It's happened at lots of stages through the way. You know, I've recently had surgery. I've got one side of me is a lot smaller than the other side. You know, there's loss there in a very physical way, but that's gone, dead. You know, the cancer's out, dead. That's a good way of looking at it. But I've lost something that was mine. I've lost a part of my body. I've lost a part of my identity. You know, hair, bust, all sorts of things. You know, it's all of that. And you're absolutely right. At that moment of being told, you know, when you get that diagnosis, you have all that fear building up to it. That, you know, it is anticipatory grief. It's like you're waiting for something to die because you think you're going to die without a doubt. Like you said, as soon as that word cancer is there, you think you're going to die. And I'm sure everybody feels that. But again, it's not just cancer diagnosis, it's lots of things, isn't it? You know, you had a loss of a loved one. You know, you might have felt at some point, I'm going to die too. You know, I'm going to die. How do I live? How do I live this way? Because we've changed in that instant, haven't we? You know, and that again is, you know, how am I going to be? I think I said I think the last time we spoke, stepping into the new me. You know, I haven't stepped into the new me yet. I'm still grieving the loss of the old me. I'm still going through that process of recognizing how much I've lost and I'm still losing. And you must be the same. You know, it's for a different reason. But that, you know, every day almost there's another bit of you that goes, oh, that's not, that old me has gone. I'm forming the new me. You know, does that hit home to you with your experience as well?
It does. I think that this is important because we have such different experiences. It's funny you said, I was thinking in my head to share with our viewers or listeners, if you don't know Nadine, she had the most enviable head of luxurious long hair that 100% of women on the globe envied. And but then I thought to myself, well, who doesn't know Nadine? Everyone does. But I do want to say that when I found myself in a circumstance where I made a choice, I felt I had no choice but to what I call divorce in love. I did go through a death of a sort, for sure. I was in a difficult circumstance. I made a choice to get divorced, but I, in my own work and process and journey, which you're a part of, and my good friends, you know, and family were all a part of supporting, I made a choice for myself to live, to divorce in love. And without a doubt, all of what you just talked about also does apply to divorce, even when it's rancorous, you know, because most people don't go to the altar imagining that they're ever going to divorce. Mine was not like that, but without a doubt, you're in this long process of something else. When something this traumatic happens to you, when you get this diagnosis or you discover things or things happen in your life, and or if you get suddenly laid off from your job, you know, there's all the things, then you your body goes into this either momentary or not so momentary stasis. And it could be said that you die a bit that day, or if your loved one, your husband or wife is diagnosed, or partner is diagnosed with Parkinson's disease or Alzheimer's, you know, that's not you, but the one you love, you've been with them for 30 years, then you do. And what we're here to talk about and to invoke and elucidate on is the process of, you know, moving through. We started our conversation talking about that we have each other, and of course both of us have many other dear friends as well. We share with that it's not stuck, that you don't keep it stuck in you. You know, you have a loving partner and such dear friends. And at that moment, when you said quite astoundingly and pretty easily, Nadine, that when you got the diagnosis, without a doubt, you said, I changed instantly. You know, the old me died instantly that day. And then, but as I said, you didn't actually physically kill over and leave the physical world. Instead, you had to be in this stasis state. As you said, you're in shock for a while, and so on and so forth. And so if we don't allow this grieving out, you can shout at the sea, you can sob to a friend over text, you can, you know, be in the company of people who love and support you. For our listeners, I just want to explain that my hands are up, they're out, they're open, and I'm making little circles in front of me. I just came to awareness that I was doing this. And of course, what I'm doing is keeping the energy moving, because this conversation is deep, it's hard, and everything about death can actually stultify, like stop energy. And so Nadine and I both practice Qigong. So we're keeping the energy moving in this conversation because we want you to understand that when you have the death of you, of this sort or that sort or the other sort, all the different ways that grief, shock, trauma impact us, then there are these ways of coming up into through a channel or a canal into rebirth and renewal. You don't have to share out loud, quite as loud as Nadine and I have developed an ability to do, but for sure, releasing it out of you is absolutely vital. Would you agree with that, Nadine?
Totally, and you're absolutely right with that energy. You know, I don't want anyone to feel down with this, because this is an uplifting conversation, and it does help, doesn't it? Because you can sink down in a conversation, can't you? And to get that energy flowing again is really important. So thank you for reminding us to do that. Yes. But you're so right. That kind of, you know, that not being scared of the fact that you've changed, not being scared of the fact that there is loss as well, because a lot of what I'm getting from sharing what I'm going through massively is that people are saying, I'm not so scared because I've seen you go through things. I was scared. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I was scared of the word cancer, terrified of chemotherapy, terrified of dying, terrified of losing my hair. You know, I'm not scared anymore, because I've had to face those. So though I've got some gratitude for that. I wouldn't wish everyone to go through it that way, but to people to realize, you know, you had the death of a loved one, you know, it's terrifying. It's something we're all scared of. We don't want to lose things, but we do. And we still carry on. Part of us dies too. You're absolutely right, you know, but we can still find a way and carry on. And that's something, again, I want people to really understand. It's going to happen to every one of us in some shape or form. And as you know, a little bit, it was about a year ago, actually, that I did my grief counselling course. And I'm so glad that I did. The timing, who knew what was around the corner, but it served me so well. But that started off, and I think I've shared this with you as well, with thinking about all the things in our life, all the times when we've lost something. And that goes back to starting school, changing schools, changing jobs, like you said earlier. You know, we lose something all the time. And maybe every step of the way, every change in our life, some part of us dies. Maybe, you know, I don't know. Thinking of it that way takes some of the fear out, doesn't it? You know, we have been through loss every day of our life almost. You know, when we're born, we've lost the safety of our mother's womb. We come out, we're in the world. You know, we've lost something, you know. So loss and death is a word that people don't like to say, but I'm comfortable saying it, you know, is part of life, isn't it? You know, and I can see the emotions are there in you. I'm touching something there,
It
aren't I?
is.
Yeah.
You know, I think of millions of people who were impacted by the millions of losses from COVID-19. And every one of them is a human. In synagogue last night, the rabbi said, every one of those people who died is a name.
Yeah.
And today I want to just, for a moment, it just came to me to speak directly to the millions of people who died a death of their own on the day they lost their loved one to COVID.
That's, yeah.
Which at that time in 2020, as that was all happening, I didn't know that my journey over the next 3 years would be to lose my father and then my mother and then my husband 3 years in a row. And I feel the pain and anguish now of literally millions of people who died a death on the day they lost people. Any natural disaster, we have them, wars, we have them, violence, you know, we have them. And I just want to say that, you know, Nadine, what you and I are doing here is, in having this conversation, is to help them understand, you know, in a way, you died a death as well that day. On the day that my husband died, I died a death that day, you know, and, you know, it was tragic and traumatic, but it could always be said, other people have suffered worse. But every loss is your own.
Yes, it is your own, yeah. And it is right. I'm really feeling that as you're speaking, Susan. So thank you for sharing that. But it really is, you know, don't downplay it. Don't, you know, we always go to, oh, someone, I say it myself, oh, it could be worse. It's what we are feeling in this moment, and this is our feeling, and it's not comparable to anyone else's. You know, this is our unique emotion, isn't it? And it's so important not to jump to underplaying that, because we can tend to do that, can't we? You know, whatever we feel, and it's genuine and it's valid and it's important, isn't it? And I think you touched on something there that was so valuable about, you know, what everyone is going through affects so many other people. You know, what you've been through, like you say, you've had the loss of your father, your mother, your husband, you know, and that has affected you massively. So you're really feeling every step of the way, but you know that your sadness and your loss has affected other people, the people in your life, you know, that care about you. And again, with the diagnosis, you know, it is that I know how many people are saddened by my loss and my feelings and what I'm going through, you know. And again, coming back to the superficial, the easy one to say, the hair, the amount of messages I got from people that said, I cried when I saw you'd lost your hair, you know.
Yeah.
It's a loss, it's a sadness. Let's grieve that, let's put it in its place and put it there. It's valuable, and it's only hair. It will come back. I can downplay it if you like, but it made me really sad, and it made a lot of other people really sad. And so it's, you know, I want to honor that. I want to go, that was a great loss. It's never going to be back to the way it was. It's never coming back. I'm not that person, as I said earlier. I'm not going back to that person. I'm not striving to actually go back to the Nadine I was. there's lots of good in that, but there is a sadness too, because I will never be that person again. And like you said earlier, that came from that day one of, well, before that actually, but diagnosis was the real marker.
Yeah.
Before that, there was loss, and everything had changed. You know, my world was shook up. And the same with you, you know, through a different reason. And lots of other people that might be listening or watching this will have a reason they can relate to what we're saying, but it will be different. Because that change happens. And you're right, with COVID, I have a very good friend of mine who is actively campaigning with our government and everything about the losses through COVID and the injustice. And she is still hurting so much because there is no justice. I'm not going to get into politics, but, you know, it hurts so many. And she is then connecting, I think, on a weekly basis, you know, she is connecting with so many other people that are still feeling so much loss and sadness. And
I did feel that
yeah,
very
it's really,
strongly. You know, let me say out loud here that what happened with me just now, even when Nadine referenced my loss, and then it came over me emotionally. I could feel the emotion come up, and then it became visible. And Nadine said to me, I could feel, you know, that you're emotional. And then what happens when you're emotional, when you come into the tears, it's not a problem. But what happens is that your autonomic nervous system shifts, and you might go into what we call fight, flight, or freeze. And, you know, of course, I'm extremely good at emoting. And so, and also I'm running a podcast conversation here, but I could feel it coming up. And so in this moment, what I want to do is give myself relief, and to you, Nadine, and to all of our listeners and viewers. And we're going to take a moment to come into our bodies. We're going to use Qigong. We're going to find a bit of calm by shifting into the parasympathetic nervous system, where you're in rest, digest, and restore. So perhaps we might call this a restorative moment. So let's take a moment, Nadine, to lift up our bodies. Just lift up the back. We're both sitting. We've been talking. Our shoulders are forward. Our head is jutting forward. The chin is out. And we want to come into alignment. So sit yourself up. Bring your shoulders back and down. We're aligning the spine, aligning the neck. Ears are over the shoulders where they're supposed to be. Chin is down a little bit. Head is up. Spine is lengthening. And you can already begin to feel yourself coming into a more calm state of being. We're going to now bring a thought into our heads of self-comfort, release, relief, and really just letting go of whatever might be weighing us down. And we're going to take a breath. We're going to breathe in through the nose, hold it for a second, and then a long extended exhale. Here we go. Breathe in and out. I've learned so much of the benefit of this simple single breath that can actually shift you back into a place where you're more functional, more well, more able to go on from that place of grief, loss, emotion, whatever. And so we're just going to do it one more time, and then we'll get back to our conversation. So we're going to breathe in, hold, and then long extended exhale. Shoulders down. Here we go. Thank you, Nadine, for taking that Qigong moment with me.
So powerful, isn't it? I hope people did that with us, and if not, you know, they can replay this and do it, because it's so valuable, isn't it, to tune in and just take a moment. And it's being quite brave, isn't it, to go, I'm going to feel those feelings, I'm going to do it. So in that moment, we probably looked quite serene. It was doing what it needed to do. But in that moment, I've done it in the past, and it's actually made my pain, if you like, what I'm going through at the moment, hurt a bit more. So again, that's something not to be scared of. In that moment when we're tuning in and really feeling our feelings, sometimes we can go, and I can get that feeling in my tummy like I've been punched. I go, ow, that really hurts. But actually, that's good. That is good. And again, just that breath, I always say, and everybody knows it is the exhalation that soothes you. You know, take a breath in, obviously we do that automatically, but that calming, so I see it like a soothing stroke going all the way down my body, and it really does that, doesn't it? So whatever emotions you might be tuning into, and I think, you know, we're sort of taught, aren't we, to push our emotions to one side and just get on with things, and or think happy thoughts and it will change, but to go into those feelings and feel them a little bit more, which you can do with that lovely little breath exercise, you know, it's so important, isn't it? And to know as well that it will pass. It doesn't hurt forever. It can hurt. And I do. I literally get almost like a kick in my tummy sometimes when those emotions are hitting. And I used to be really scared and go, oh, I just want to get away from that. But now I go into it and then I come out. So it changes, doesn't it? So,
well, let's acknowledge that many people use substances to avoid that feeling. You know, the use of weed is so prevalent. Alcohol has been used for centuries, if not longer. And there's other things that happen as well. And so, you know, Cornelia Stephanie has the expression "feel to heal." That's where I've heard it. It probably isn't hers original.
Perfect, isn't it? I love it. I love
it.
But
that really is what we're talking about here. I want to invite our listeners to go to a time where they felt something and suppressed it, suppressed down into depressed, or a time where you felt something and you were able to share it with someone else. Perhaps it was only your journal. But this is why journaling is so effective for people who are inclined to write. I cannot say how much. I have over 30 journals myself. I have a big bin of them over there. So when recently Rebecca said, well, when did this happen? I said, well, I could look in my journal and tell you the exact date, you know. And so even that is a way, if it's too intimate, too deep, too scary to share with someone else, then you could write it to get it out of you. But this releasing is so important. Also, I want to say very clearly, Nadine, that with Qigong as a tool, or Tai Chi and Qigong as a tool, this mindful movement. Recently, I attended a medical research conference where an oncologist researcher said, called it mindful medication with a C, mindful medication with a C. That's what we talk about, activating this healing medicine. When we take this breath, it's not just spiritually, energetically, and emotionally and mentally supporting us, but it's actually physically supporting us, where we are getting our systems flowing again from this, you know, my hands are tight, my shoulders are tight from the state of tense, you know, tenseness and stress induction. So this is all so important. I want to thank you for saying, you know, yes, this is a deep conversation, but I want to focus for the remaining time, a few more minutes, on the rebirth and renewal.
Yes,
let's do that, because what you've shared here today is it's extraordinary. I want to thank you so much for, you know, sort of bravely, vulnerably sharing with us that, you know, the old me sort of died that day. And there were so many things along the way, including your breasts, as we've talked about. You know, you said we could talk about anything where you had your breast surgery. Right now, one is, you know, has had the surgery, the other hasn't. You're lopsided, it's awkward, it feels uncomfortable, it's weird, and you're self-conscious about it, even though I told you that other people can't really see it. But all of these things, there's nothing more intimate to a woman than her breasts or her hair, actually. But then, yet, still in all, Nadine, here we are. Today happens to be a Sunday. It's early morning by me. It's late afternoon by you. And here we are, kind of standing, if you will, to talk about it. Isn't it incredible?
It is incredible, and it is it's just wonderful, isn't it? You know, we are really blessed. We are very lucky, aren't we? But it is right. You're absolutely right. That the idea of rebirth, and I'm doing a lot of work personally on myself at the moment, as I say, you know, being selfish and looking after me first. It is, you know, I've recently had the surgery, so I've had the cancer cut out. That's good, you know, but that's gone. Do you know how weird is that? I had a little bit of a loss about that. You know, the cancer that I've been living with and getting to accept and make friends with, if you like, and love and get comfortable with was taken out, which is weird that I
I
felt
mean,
like that.
that's a conversation for another time. We got to have another
There is
conversation.
exactly. Let's do that. But also it is that, you know, part of my body was taken away. So that is loss, isn't it? You know, I have not got the bust that I had. I'm never going to have that again. And, you know, you said about my hair before, you know, some people see me as the person with the big bust and the lots of hair. You know, I'm not that person anymore. But there is a new person coming that actually I'm quite excited about. I have this opportunity now to be something different. And that is, you know, it's got to be a good thing, hasn't it? We change all the time. We just need to go with it, don't we? And also, I feel that it is, like you say, the rebirth, the idea of that. I'm working on that emotion. You know, physically, I've had something cut away. Physically, my hair was gone. But actually, emotionally, there is a train of thought, and I'm not laying blame here. I don't want to go there at all. But, you know, the cancer came into my body for a reason. There was something going on. There was something, maybe there's lessons to be learned, isn't there? There's things to change and recognize. So for me, I really, really feel that it's not just the physical that's been cut out of me. That's obvious, and that's definitely happened. There's no denying that. But the emotions have to go too. Whatever I was holding on to that was doing me harm has to go. And that is symbolized in a way, if this makes any sense, to the actual growth in my body that has been cut away and has gone. So I'm working on the mental side as well, the emotional side, to make sure that I am using this experience to the best of my ability, of my knowledge and understanding as it is at the moment, to go, right, okay, there's emotional stuff to go with this as well. It's not just, you know, I do a lot of meditation on myself, and a lot of that is to do with, yes, that's been cut out physically from my body, but I want to actually release those emotions too, the things that I'm holding on to, the things that the old habits and patterns I mentioned earlier, you know, that maybe need to go now. They need to die too. They need to go. So that is my process personally at the moment. And that is, it's a little bit painful, a little bit, you know, I'm having to be quite disciplined to keep doing that work on myself.
Right.
But so beneficial. This is where the rebirth comes, because it's that literally making space, isn't it, for the new to come in. And I still don't quite know what that new is. That's okay not to know, not to have all the answers. It's a bit scary. I am being very vulnerable by going, oh, I'm opening myself up to I don't know what. But there is so much joy and excitement in that. I can get excited about thinking about, oh, what my hair's going to turn into, you know, all the stages of the way, all the things I can do with it, you know, new boobs,
Yeah.
you know, looking at it a different way. And not to just skip to the positive, because that is something that we can always do, to feel all the pain that goes with it too. Sometimes I'm overwhelmed by the sense of loss. And that's fine. You know, I have those moments where I just go, and you must feel the same, you know, it hits you, doesn't it? You know, there's so much loss because we have died. But we have rebirth. We are still here in the physical. We are growing, changing into something even more amazing and wonderful. That's a given, isn't it? You know, that's happening. But it is that, you know, I think someone said to me years ago, you know, if we chose, when you're frightened of dying, if we chose to go through birth, which we do choose, but you know, it's a bit different, isn't it? We would be terrified of that too. And that makes sense, doesn't it? So that fear of dying is real. Feel it, get through it. You know, it's going to happen to all of us. It happens to us every step of the way in our life anyway, in some shape or form. But that rebirth as well, I'm a bit scared of that as well. But that's understandable, isn't it? You know, what I'm turning into, how's it going to be? You know, am I going to be able to manage it? Am I going to do it well enough? I've got all these questions and doubts going on. But the overriding feeling that keeps coming back is, my goodness, I'm quite excited. You know, this is a wonderful opportunity. And again, I think with you, you know, much as you you know, you've got all this sadness, you've got all this loss, you've got all of these emotions going on. You know you're changing. You know you have an opportunity to make your life whatever you want in a different way. You know, the new Susan is evolving, you know, and it is tinted, you know, with all this loss and grief and sadness and all these emotions that are not so comfortable. But do you have that underlying feeling of like, oh my goodness, what am I turning into? How exciting is this?
I mean, I have it every day. My life is so different now. And I just wrote down turning loss to love. This journey that we're on does not mean, in my case, I lost, you know, my partner, my life partner. It doesn't mean that I let go of all that went along with him. In fact, I didn't understand it before, but now I do understand that you can connect with the memory of the person in the most profound, beautiful, loving, deep way. And maybe that's a conversation for another time. You can interview me on that. But also for you, you know, you're becoming something new, but you're only becoming something new because of that beautiful soul you were before. And so I want people to, you know, perhaps this is a good way to leave this conversation, to understand, you know, we're not talking about cutting and moving on. That's not the way it goes. You know, we bring it all with, and the healthiest way for us to continue to, you know, grow as the humans we are, develop the mind, body, and soul, and make the impact that is absolutely intended, that every human, you know, can make in their lives. And Nadine, I just want to say thank you so much. I believe that we've accomplished a little bit of this today. I am surely going to be, as I always do with our conversations, in a very little while, I'm going to be walking the dog and listening to this whole conversation again. And I invite our listeners to do the same. I'm on 3 pages of notes. Nadine knows I take notes from
you do. You are amazing, the amount of things you do. But you're absolutely right. I listen back to these podcasts again and again because there's so much in them. And we speak from the heart, don't we? We don't prepare what we're saying. So I never know what I've said. It's lovely to hear back. And I get so much from it. So I encourage everyone to definitely listen once, but listen more than once, because there's always more that you can hear and resonate with, isn't there? So they are valuable in so many ways. And you touched earlier on, and we didn't talk about it, and again, I'm not going to say too much, but I'd like to encourage people to look back at an episode from a while ago when we talked about alcohol suppressing feelings, with my use of alcohol and what I did it for, because again, people will benefit from hearing that, won't they? And that's one of our older episodes, and that again we could touch on another conversation, because we have many, don't we? So but thank you for being the catalyst to this. You know, this wouldn't have happened if you didn't share your vulnerability with me and really work on that intimacy that we have going on between us. This wouldn't have come up, would it? So I'm very grateful to you and to our relationship that we have, the connection that we have, and this opportunity to be able to share it with other people. We are lucky that we can do that, aren't we?
It's quite extraordinary. As you just said, you know, extraordinary things to come when you find relief, allow release, and come into a sort of renewal. It doesn't mean that you know, cut off or cut out everything that was before, because we wouldn't be here without that. But how is it that we choose to go forward? My friend, I love you. I'm grateful to you, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you.